If you've ever been forced to choose between dignity and family, leave a comment, hit like, share this story, and follow the channel so you don't miss what's next. My name is Emily, I'm 25 and work full-time as a barista at a small cafe in Flagstaff, Arizona. Since I was 16, I've balanced school and work to pay for my tuition and expenses, living with my parents to save money. That morning, my birthday, I had just wiped down the counter after the morning rush when my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "We sold your car. Got $4,000. Family comes first. Be grateful we still let you live here." I froze. My heart didn't race. It stalled. That car was mine, paid for with 3 years of saving, extra shifts, selling old clothes, scraping every dollar. It was in my name. And with one message, it was gone. No warning, no permission. I set the phone on the wooden counter, pulse pounding behind my ears. My hand landed on a splash of coffee left behind by a rushed customer. I wiped it, over and over, as if I could erase the weight crawling across my chest. Mia, my coworker, nudged my arm. "You okay?" I nodded, lips stiff. "Yeah." She didn't believe me, but didn't press. A few minutes later, she came back with a latte topped with a leaf design. "Happy birthday." I gave a weak laugh. "Thanks." I didn't feel like drinking it. I reopened my phone and typed, "What are you talking about? That's my car. It's in my name. I paid for it." Dad replied almost immediately. "Izam's college deposit was due. Your mom and I agreed. The car is a family asset." I stared at the screen. Ethan, my younger brother, 18, had never worked a shift in his life. He just got into some elite private school in Massachusetts. I was happy for him. But, family asset? I typed again. "You had no right to sell it. I don't consent." The third message came fast. "Don't be selfish. Your mom and I supported you all these years. Time for you to give back." I put the phone down and didn't pick it up again. My skin felt too tight, like I was being pushed out of my own space. I slipped into the stockroom, closed the door, and tried to breathe. Ugh. Memories rolled like clips on a projector. The bi-weekly plasma donations. The mason jar labeled car fund on my nightstand. Saying no to weekend trips to pick up extra shifts. The day I got the keys, sitting behind the wheel, fingers tracing the steering wheel in silence. That old Toyota wasn't just transportation, it was proof I could stand on my own. Mia tapped the stockroom door, voice low. "Customer asking for a decaf espresso. You good to jump in?" I took a long breath, nodded, and opened the door. My customer service smile snapped back into place, like muscle memory. But something deeper had shifted, and I didn't realize it was only the beginning. The night shift drifted by in a fog of sore feet and numb thoughts. I poured cappuccinos, wiped counters, answered customers like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just lost the one thing I'd built on my own. I left work just before 9 p.m., zipping my coat higher as the Flagstaff air bit down with that sharp edge November carries. The streets were thinning out. The late bus had stopped running. I started walking home. Just under 2 miles. But tonight, each step dragged heavier than the last. Our house sat at the dead end of a quiet street, wild grass edging the sidewalk. The living room light was still on. Through the window, I saw Dad near the fireplace, beer in hand, posture stiff. Mom had disappeared into the kitchen. On the table sat a chocolate cake, with "Congrats, Ethan" piped in deep red frosting. I stood outside for a moment, then opened the door. "Emily?" Mom called without looking. I took off my shoes, hung up my coat. "Yeah." Ethan looked up from his laptop, wearing his new Stanford hoodie, the one that arrived 3 days ago. "You're home? Cake's pretty good." I walked to the kitchen, poured myself some water, and leaned against the sink. Mom turned, voice too light. "Don't give us that face, Emily. There's a reason for everything." I didn't respond, my fingers curled tightly around the glass. "That car," Dad said, stepping in from the living room, voice low but firm, "was just a vehicle. It doesn't define your worth." I met his eyes. But I paid for it. And it's in my name. He waved a hand. Family comes first. You live in this house. You need to understand that. I've paid rent since I turned 20, I said slowly. $350 a month, plus utilities. That's nearly $500 every month. Ethan shifted, probably the first time he'd heard that number. I don't mind helping, I added, but this isn't help, this is theft. Dad went quiet. Mom turned to stir a soup pot that had long since gone cold. No one said another word. I left the kitchen, climbed to my room, and closed the door. In the quiet, I opened my laptop and checked my bank account. Balance, $73.40. I hit send on a small transfer, $30, to Amanda, my best friend and coworker. Note: for the birthday cupcake. Thank you. Then I opened a new tab and searched, report car sold without permission, then, Arizona personal property ownership laws. Dozens of links. I read them all. Each gray box of legal language, trying to sort what was a right, what was a rule, and what was just generational guilt dressed as duty. An hour later, my eyes burned. But nothing clear emerged. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The same water stain from last spring still bloomed in the corner. I still had work tomorrow, but tomorrow night, I'd go ask the one adult in the family who'd never borrowed money from me, Aunt Claire. What I didn't know was whether she'd take my side or stay silent like the rest. The next night, I clocked out at 7:30. Amanda handed me a small box as I pulled on my scarf. My favorite tragic older sister needs sugar. Lemon bars. Still warm. I laughed softly. You know me too well. I didn't go home. The late bus only went as far as Elm Street. From there it was 3 more blocks to Aunt Claire's, Dad's younger sister, who lived alone on the 3rd floor of a creaky building where the stairs still moaned with every step. She opened the door after 3 knocks, still in jeans and a wine-colored sweater, glasses perched on her nose. Emily, come in. You walked in this weather? I nodded. The living room looked exactly like it did in my childhood, succulent in the same corner, glazed ceramic plate on the same wooden table. Sit. Tea? Do you have mint? Of course. Apple pie too, though the edges are a little burned. I waited while Aunt Claire brewed the tea, my eyes resting on an old photo on the wall. Me, Ethan, and Aunt Claire at the beach when I was 14, all of us sunburned. I still had braces then. She set the cup down and sat across from me. You holding up okay? Her voice was calm, not pressing. I looked into the tea. Dad sold my car, no warning, said it was for Ethan's college deposit. She froze, hands still wrapped around her mug. You're kidding. No. It's in my name, but he had a copy of the paperwork. I don't know how, but he sold it, got $4,000. Her face shifted into something hard to read. Half surprise, half something like she'd already seen it coming. I guess you need more than apple pie right now. I need to know what rights I have, and if this is even normal. You once told me freedom starts with money, but what happens when someone takes even that from you? Aunt Claire rested her elbows on the table. No. What your father did isn't normal. And it's not legal. But it's not new either. You warned him before. I tried, she said, voice softer. But in that house, the one who speaks up usually gets shut out. My fingers curled into my palm. I have some material on personal property rights, also how to report unauthorized transactions. I'll print it for you. I nodded, grateful. Do you think I should call the police? Not yet, not unless you're ready for a fallout you can't undo. I exhaled. I don't know if I am, but if they expect me to pay for Ethan's tuition too. She stood. Then you'll need more than pie. I smiled. Just a little, but it was real. Leaving her apartment with the printed documents hugged to my chest, I walked beneath the patchy glow of streetlights. November air slapped my face, but my mind was heating up with something I hadn't dared believe in before. The possibility of taking back what was mine. What I didn't expect was that Ethan would be the one to crack it all wide open. I got home just before 11 p.m. The door was locked, so I rang the bell. Mom opened it in a thin robe, a kitchen towel still in hand. "It's late, Emily," she whispered, eyes flicking to the stack of papers I held. I said nothing, went straight to my room. The stairs creaked like always, but tonight the sound felt closer, louder. Inside, I laid the packet from Aunt Claire on my desk. My desk lamp cast a soft yellow glow over the title, Unauthorized Vehicle Transfer and Title Disputes. Every section was clearly labeled with footnotes and legal terms. I highlighted the paragraph about presumed co-ownership and how to prove sole property rights. I still had a photo of my car registration. I'd sent it to Amanda when I bought it. A wave of relief washed over me, tiny fragments of power still intact. I opened the drawer where I kept important documents, passport, social security card, birth certificate. But the drawer was empty. I checked again, pulled out every envelope, every folder, every old tuition receipt from Coconino College. Nothing. I stood up and went through the rest of the room. The shoebox under my bed, where I used to keep a spare bank card and my high school savings book, empty. My hands went cold. I opened the door and hurried downstairs. The living room was dark, only the kitchen light faintly on. Mom was arranging flowers in a vase. "Mom?" I asked, my voice dry. "Have you seen my personal documents? Social security card, passport, tax forms?" She startled slightly. "Your dad said he'd keep them safe so they wouldn't get misplaced." "Where would he keep them? They're mine." He thought, "It'd be safer to store them in the basement file cabinet." "Same as the rest of the family's papers." "The cabinet's locked." "Well, he has the key." I stared at her, hoping for any sign to contradict what I was thinking. Nothing. Her eyes didn't meet mine. Her voice was small, defensive. I didn't say another word. I went back upstairs, hands trembling. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I texted Amanda. "Looks like Dad took all my personal documents. No idea when." Her reply popped up after the typing dots. "What the hell, I can have the couch ready if you need it." I looked at the wall clock. The hour hand had just touched midnight. My birthday had officially passed. No cake, no card, no words from family, no car. And now, possibly, no legal identity. I picked up Aunt Claire's packet again and flipped to the section, How to Request Replacement for Lost or Stolen Documents. Documents can be reissued, a car can be replaced, but one thing was cracking in a way that might never be mended: trust. And the next morning, Ethan knocked on my door with a look I had never seen on him before. Not smug, not carefree, just lost. He knocked at 7 a.m. Didn't wait for my reply, just pushed the door slightly open, standing half hidden behind the frame. "Do you have a second?" His voice was like breath on cold glass. I put down my notebook, nodded. "Come in." He didn't. He just shifted toward the top of the stairs. I got up, grabbed a sweatshirt and followed. We sat on the wooden landing of the second floor, where morning sun cut across a tiny hallway window. The spot where we used to build Lego castles, while Mom folded laundry and Dad napped. Ethan placed his phone on his knee, tracing the screen's edge with his thumb. A nervous habit. "Dad told me he was transferring the college deposit this morning," he said slowly. "But he couldn't log into the old account, and apparently the new one's empty." I looked at him. He still wouldn't look back. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. I just heard him snapping at Mom in the kitchen. Then he went upstairs and made a call. Something about an advance payment and a casino near Laughlin." I sat upright. "A casino?" Ethan nodded. My stomach tightened. A quiet whir came from downstairs, the coffee machine kicking on. Mom was awake. Ethan finally turned to me. "What's going on?" I didn't answer right away. I thought of the late shifts at the cafe, the utility bills I helped pay last year that mysteriously had my name on them. "Do you remember when Dad had me sign that tuition support form?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. Yeah, when I was in 10th grade. He said it was just to show the school we all supported each other." "Why?" "It's not that form." I pulled out my phone and brought up the photo of the documents Aunt Claire had lent me. These are credit accounts, opened under my name. Not 1, 3. Plus, a personal loan, totaling over $26,000. Ethan's eyes widened. His mouth moved but made no sound. Used my information. Might have been a forged signature, maybe an old scan. Either way, this isn't just a family issue anymore. Ethan lowered his head. I didn't know. I thought you were okay, working hard, saving up. I never asked. I heard that and didn't even feel mad, maybe because I'd never really asked him anything back either, all these years. He spoke again, slower now. If you need, I'll testify. I mean it. For the first time in years, I didn't see him as the golden child wrapped in protection, but as someone finally realizing the role he played in the mess. I stood up. Let's get breakfast. We'll need a clear head. Ethan nodded. He walked ahead of me, his steps a little slower than usual. I went back into my room and grabbed the folder from my desk. That night, I'd have to open the forbidden file drawer in the basement and hope what I found wasn't too late. After a dinner nobody really ate, I waited for Dad to head upstairs and Mom to start washing dishes. I slipped the key from the old coat he always hung by the door, the file cabinet key he kept on him at all times. No one ever checked his pockets, just like no one ever asked what he took from their bank accounts. The basement smelled of damp paper and peeling paint. I turned on my phone flashlight and made my way to the metal filing cabinet in the corner. The key slid in and turned easily. Nothing stays locked when the key holder assumes no one's brave enough to open it. The top drawer was packed with manila envelopes, all hand-labeled. I scanned quickly. Utilities, 2021. Taxes, 2019. Ethan, college apps. Then, Emily, medicine. Arranged them by color. Emily's Jader, then ALE fresh. Emily medical. Emily medical. I pulled them all out and set them on the floor. Inside weren't just copies of forms. There were credit applications, loan documents, and 3 credit card applications under my name, signed with a forged signature. The pen strokes were stiff, upright, not mine, no doubt. And in the Emily Auto envelope, I found the vehicle title transfer. It had the words signed with emergency authorization. The signature was mine, but I never signed it. Dad had used an old scan from my college loan documents to cut and paste my signature. I sat down on the cold concrete floor, still clutching the papers. My throat was dry. A sound upstairs made me pause. The bathroom door closing. Mom. I gathered everything, packed them into my backpack, zipped it shut. On my way out, I paused at the old family photo hanging by the stairs. Me, Dad, Mom, Ethan, all smiling at the Grand Canyon. I was off to the far right of the frame, my shoulder almost cropped out. If you've ever been silenced because you weren't believed, or blamed just for speaking the truth, leave a comment. Share this story if you know someone who needs to hear it. I texted Amanda. I've got all the evidence, I'm leaving. She replied instantly. The couch is ready. Fridge has pizza. I've got wine. I smiled, though my hands were still shaking. Before I left, I placed a neatly clipped packet on the kitchen table. On top was a handwritten note. I know what's going on, and I won't stay silent anymore. I stepped outside just as the first snow of the season began to dust the sidewalk. My Uber was pulling in, headlights bright against the brick wall by the back fence. What I didn't expect was the person who opened the door when I arrived. It wasn't Amanda. It was Ethan, his hair damp from the drizzle, sneakers muddy, eyes more shaken than I'd ever seen them. I didn't know you'd be here, he said softly, like he didn't want to wake the neighbors. I stepped aside to let him in. Amanda was on a night shift at the shop, leaving a note on the table. Food's in the fridge, mint tea in the bottom drawer, and don't touch my purse. Ethan stood in the tiny living room, clutching his backpack strap. Dad knows you took the files, he said. He figured out the cabinet was opened. This morning, he lost it. Really lost it. I sat on the couch, legs tucked in, calmly watching my brother. What did he do? Started calling people nonstop. Mom was crying. Then he began deleting emails, removing banking apps. Said he was starting fresh. But he was shaking. I stayed quiet. Not because I didn't care, but because I'd come too far to be swayed by his panic now. I brought you something. Ethan opened his backpack, pulling out an envelope. The originals. Your social security card, passport, driver's license. I had to take them from Dad's drawer while he was sleeping. I took them. My hands didn't shake, but my chest tightened. Each piece felt like a memory being restored. Thanks, I said simply. Ethan sat at the edge of the sofa. I never wanted it to get this bad. But now I get it. I checked my credit too. There's a loan under my name. I nodded. Figured. What are you going to do now? I put the documents back in the folder. Aunt Claire's helping connect me to a lawyer. And Uncle Mark? He's an accountant, old friend of Dad's. They'll help. Ethan stared at the floor. If you report him to the police. I looked straight at him. It's not if, it's when. If you've ever been cast as the villain just for choosing the truth, even when it's your own parent or family, tell your story. Someone out there might need proof that they're not alone. The apartment was unusually quiet. Outside, the wind pressed against the glass, carrying the damp scent of December. Ethan stood up, his shoulders hunched like he was learning to carry a new kind of weight. I think I'm moving out, maybe into a dorm near campus, if there's space. I nodded. Good, but this time, the rent's on you. He gave me a sad smile. Got it, boss. I walked him to the door, watched his figure fade down the stairs, then shut the old wooden door behind him. It had already started to warp from the moisture. What I didn't expect was the next knock. And it wasn't an apology. It was a warning. The morning after Ethan left, I woke up to a sharp, quick knock. No text, no familiar voice. I opened the door slightly. Standing there was my mother. No coat, no lipstick, not even the familiar look in her eyes. Just a pale face, hands twisted together. The scent of dish soap still clung to her gray sweater. Do you have a few minutes? She asked, eyes refusing to meet mine. I stepped back, opened the door wider. Come in. Mom sat down on the upholstered chair in the corner of the living room, shrinking into the armrest like she didn't want to take up space. I stayed standing. I didn't know everything, she began. Your father, he didn't share. He just kept saying he was trying to keep the family together. And then, when you left, he called it a betrayal. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. You know that wasn't a betrayal. She nodded, her eyes welled up, but this time, it didn't seem like she was trying to win sympathy. I found the debt notices. So many. Every envelope had your name or Ethan's. And I realized I stopped asking questions a long time ago. I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the only way to hold a boundary. She looked around the room, where nothing belonged to her. You've done more than I ever thought. More than I ever did for myself. I let out a small laugh. Not bitter, not warm. You had the chance. You used to be like me. She fell quiet, then nodded, and I let it slip away. I walked to the shelf and took out a craft envelope from the bottom drawer. Inside were printed statements of debt under my name, photos of forged documents, and a letter outlining the events. I laid it on the table in front of her. If you still believe in making things right, I said, then this is your part. Read it carefully. And if needed, sign to confirm you weren't involved. She didn't speak, just nodded, hands trembling. I opened the door. I think you should head home now. I need to prepare for the lawyer meeting. She stood, holding the envelope like it weighed 100 pounds. Before she crossed the threshold, she turned back. Emily, if I could start over, I'd choose to stand by you. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That was something she'd have to prove, not say. The door closed behind her. I looked through the small window panel and watched her figure fade down the walkway lined with dry leaves. Then I turned back inside, grabbed my wallet, files, and keys. Aunt Claire's attorney was expecting me this afternoon, and I was ready. Not just to defend myself, but to draw a line with the very people who once called themselves family. What I didn't expect was who showed up at the lawyer's office and made me pause in silence. The law office was on the 4th floor of a red brick building overlooking Prescott Park. The path outside was lined with bare maple trees and the scent of cold, damp earth. I arrived 10 minutes early with my file folder and a sealed water bottle. My hands weren't shaking, but my heart thudded like fists on a door. In the waiting room, the silver-haired receptionist smiled and motioned me to a chair. On the table were a few financial magazines and a small orchid with pale purple blooms. "Emily Green," a deep male voice came from the frosted glass door. I stood, turned, and froze. The person who'd called my name wasn't Patricia, the attorney Aunt Claire mentioned. It was Uncle Mark, Dad's old friend, the accountant I'd seen at family gatherings, the one who once joked I'd run a company someday. He wore a pale blue shirt, gray tie, and a name badge that read, Mark E. Latham, CPA in mediation. His face looked older, but his gaze was the same. Warm, but sharp. "I'm helping Patricia today," he said gently. "She's caught up in an emergency filing, so I'm handling the initial meeting." I nodded and followed him into a small conference room. Oak table, leather chairs, a printer in the corner. I set the file down and took a seat across from him. Uncle Mark opened his notebook, but didn't write yet. "Before we begin," he said, "I need to clarify, I don't represent anyone in your family. I'm here to ensure you understand your rights and support you if you decide to move forward legally." I looked him straight in the eye. "I'm not going back. I just want my name cleared and every debt that's not mine removed." He nodded. "That's a sound decision. Claire gave me copies of everything. Patricia already sent the formal notice to your father. His response was a 3-page email, half blame, half threat." I wasn't surprised. He handed me the draft report for the credit bureau. Every line felt like a paper cut from the years I stayed silent without knowing why. When it came time to sign, Uncle Mark paused. "Emily, your father went through something similar when he was young," he said carefully. "His brother used his name to take out loans. He lost everything." I froze mid-signature. "But instead of learning to stop," Mark continued, "he learned to manipulate better. And you're the first one not to let him repeat the cycle." I placed the pen down for a second, then picked it up and signed. That afternoon, I returned to the apartment and checked my phone. A new message from Mom popped up. "Your father says he'll strike back. He's getting his own lawyer. Be prepared." I stared at the words, then put the phone down. Because I was prepared, I just didn't know how he'd strike. The reply from Dad's attorney came the following week. Just as Mom warned. Part attack, part denial. They claimed I misunderstood the intent of family financial support and accused me of damaging parental reputation by involving outsiders. It ended with a cease contact demand and a warning of potential legal action if reputational harm continues. I read through both pages without anger, just clarity. That I was exactly where I needed to be. Patricia responded for me with a cold, precise letter listing specific debts, forged signatures, and official bank statements. No emotion, no unnecessary words. A week later, the credit bureau began removing the fraudulent debts from my record, every trace left by my father's hand, gradually erased. I didn't feel victorious, just lighter. Like shrugging off a soaked coat, worn too long. I moved into a small studio on the south side of the city. Not spacious, not new, but mine, in my name, paid with my money. I painted the walls olive green, bought a second-hand armchair from the weekend market, and hung Amanda's birthday card on the wall. "You're not dramatic, you're awake." Ethan kept his word. He moved into the dorms, applied for more scholarships, and picked up a job at a bookstore near campus. Once a week, he texted usually to ask if I was eating enough. I always replied, "Are you?" Mom stayed silent after that visit. I didn't expect anything, but I hadn't closed the door either. Some people need time. It's not to be forgiven, but to realize what they let happen. Dad never reached out again. Maybe because now, if he spoke, I wouldn't sit quietly and listen. I started studying again, night classes in personal finance. Small classroom, students of all ages. I sat mid-row, taking notes with a purple pen, smiling when the instructor said, "Finance isn't math, it's power. The power to know, to choose, and to say no." I slept better. The barista job was still temporary, but enough to pay the bills on time. No one touched my income. No one checked my bank account. No one called independence selfish. I stopped explaining, I just lived louder. I don't know where you're listening from, in your car, before bed, or on a day you need a reminder to stand up again. Tell me where you're listening from. And if you want more real, honest stories like this, don't forget to follow this channel because the next one might be just what you need. Sometimes, what we need most isn't someone telling us to be strong. It's a quiet whisper that says, "You're not alone." Emily's story isn't just about a stolen car. It's about reclaiming ownership of her life after years of suffocation by forced family duty. Amid blame, manipulation, and silence, she chose clarity, freedom, and boundaries. In real life, many people like Emily sacrifice too much for family and forget their own worth. But awakening begins the moment you say enough and don't look back. That's quiet strength, and it lasts.